Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 221 here, back in today talking about Kagurabachi, chapter number 68. This chapter is titled Metamorphosis. Wow, we're going from a butterfly larva, they're turning into a cocoon, and then going through some metamorphosal process into a grand butterfly. I actually think I missed a stage of caterpillar in there, being this like larva to a caterpillar, then to a cocoon, and then to a butterfly, but hey, I have not taken that like... Where did I even learn that? That was like, what, like maybe second grade? That was probably like kindergarten, like just based in science, evolution, facts, like that march of like, not march of progress, because that's not like how humans evolved. And we're like, you know what? I don't know where I'm going with this. I was making like a metamorphosis joke because like, hey, the chapter title is called Metamorphosis, but I don't know. I guess I don't know my butterflies enough. Like, hey, whenever I think of Pokemon, like you've got Caterpie, and the Metapod, and the Butterfree, like, there's all of that, but I feel like there's, you know what, I sort of want to look this up now. What is the, butter, if I can spell right, butterfly, evo, or let's look up butterfly metamorphosis stages. Yeah, let's look at this. So, yes, an egg, a caterpillar, a pupa, and an adult. Yeah, okay. So, what's that? Is that 1, 2, 3? Okay, it is 4 stages. Yeah, it's like the... Yeah, you know what, maybe I did get it right the first time. You know what, let's talk about Kagurabachi. Like I said, this is chapter number 68, titled Metamorphosis, and honestly, a pretty good chapter of Kagurabachi for sure, because it really just gets more into the it really just delves more into the general action going on here in the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel, as like all of our moving parts are sort of like coming together. The Hishaku, who are on the main floor, have now, Hiruhiko has met up with Chihiro, and the two of them were like getting ready to get started in a little bit of a duel. Iori's behind Chihiro, all of this various stuff's going on. Like, it seems like Yojiro Sengoku's head is just held pretty much in Hiruhiko's hands here, so it doesn't look like he's doing pretty well, but we'll be getting more of how that all worked here in this chapter, which is pretty cool, being like, we didn't see how that battle went, but we are going to see more of it here in this chapter, which is, as I say, pretty cool. But before we hop into this great old chapter of Kagurabachi, again, like I said, chapter number 68 of the series, before that happens, we need to talk about what happened last time in Kagurabachi, and I just mentioned a little bit of it there. We pretty much saw the whole confrontation between Todo and Hiruhiko, the two Hishaku members who are in the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel. Pretty much, Todo's just sitting down in her chair, and Hiruhiko said, "Oh man, you Mr. Yojiro Sengoku, I want to fight you and, like, train my skills." And we also learned there that Hiruhiko has not studied under any master, and Hiruhiko said that they are a student of freedom. They are a student of whatever they believe that they want to do, which is a really just funny way to sort of put that, like, hey, I'm a student of freedom. And that even gets brought up in this chapter 68 here. Eventually we come upstairs to where Chihiro and Iori were. The two of them were sort of talking with each other, and Iori eventually makes a decision of, hey, I want to go back to school, forget the life this is, forget who my father is and all that stuff. And of course, we do get more development on that in this chapter. A bunch of thugs were coming after Chihiro and all of Chihiro and Iori, mainly Iori, but we will get more on that in this chapter too. Honestly, everything that got referenced last chapter also just gets referenced directly in this chapter, so hey, I guess I don't even need to do the last time, but hey, we're still doing it anyway. The Masumi have finished the seal on top of the roof, and then the whole idea, or no, that may be something we'll learn in this chapter. Who knows? I forget at this point, right? But the end of the chapter is pretty much Hiruhiko and Chihiro sort of facing off, getting ready to fight each other, and of course, Iori is behind Chihiro, and Chihiro's like, hey, don't worry, Iori, I will make sure that you get out of this alive. And that is where we ended chapter number 67. And we start off chapter 68 with a little bit of a remembrance of wherever Chihiro is holding down the sorcerer who came to sort of like attack Iori last chapter. And he's like, hey, who are you and what are you doing here? And that sorcerer just says like, hey, somebody called my room and they promised me a pile of money. So Chihiro's first response here is just looking at Hiruhiko like, oh, so that was you, was it? And we see that Hiruhiko's like, oh yeah, I asked this dude's brain here what room you were in, as he sort of holds up Sengoku's head in his hands. And he's like, hey, it's really just great that you're here. I mean, the clientele here are extremists of one sort or another, and they're all headed to this floor now. And with the manager gone, I mean, there's nothing holding them back. And I also sort of do find this a little intriguing, because Hiruhiko says that he asked this dude's brain. So I sort of believe that this may be part of Todo's abilities, because Todo does not seem very much of a combatant type. Todo very much seems more of a, hey, I've got reconnaissance abilities and abilities that can help out all of this general stuff. Also, maybe why that she's partnered up with Kogiri, because Kogiri is this character who you've seen multiple times be all of this. I'm a strong guy, and Toto is my sort of reconnaissance outlet in this sort of duo deal here, right? So, pretty interesting there, to say the least. But at this point, Hiruhiko then looks over and looks to Iori, who's, of course, like, sort of huddling behind Chihiro, sort of, like, grabbing onto his jacket, like, what's going on here? I'm scared. Of course, being that, like, Hiruhiko's, like, a lot of blood just, like, running down right next to her left eye in this moment. And Hiruhiko's just like, oh, me and you, we haven't been introduced yet, you know? And he's like, hey, thank you for being born Samura's weakness. And man, just the way that Hiruhiko is drawn here, like the hair in the bun, it's all messy, hanging over to one side, like the little part like hanging down in the middle. Oh man, I love Hiruhiko's design through and through. And as Hiruhiko says this, they suddenly toss up Yojiro Sengoku's head, and they cut it directly in half, and the blood from this splatter sort of not only catches Chihiro off guard, but also splatters some blood over his face, so it's sort of like, oh man, where's that almost coming from all of a sudden, right? And then Chihiro sort of like goes and like holds out his sword, preventing Hiruhiko from actually going through and harming Iori in this moment. And a few tears start to form in Iori's eyes, and she's like crying, like trying to like put her hands over her face to protect herself, as if that would ever work. And Chihiro sort of just like looks over to the elevator thing in general and looks over at Hiruhiko. And Hiruhiko just is like, hey, I know you've had it rough, Chihiro, having to clean up after Samura's mess. Samura's currently in motion to kill the contracted sword bearers, and when I get my hands on his daughter, that should get his attention. He's so racked with guilt that he doesn't even realize what's going on here. What a moron, right? And Chihiro sort of pins Hiruhiko up against the wall in the moment and like just holding their swords back and forth, like making sure none of the other can cut each other. And Chihiro just goes like, hey, you won't lay a hand on her. Chihiro just remembers Iori being like, hey, I want to go back to school. And Chihiro's like, hey, this girl is no longer a part of this. As Chihiro goes, and the elevator is still open whenever Chihiro and Hiruhiko have been fighting. So Chihiro sort of like forces Hiruhiko back into the elevator, goes through, and then throws his sword through the side of the elevator, completely severing all of the pulleys and all of the chains and everything, pretty much making the elevator not be held up by suspended force anymore and making it crash all the way down to the ground floor. And Iori is sort of left just standing on whatever, we actually don't know what floor the Masumi and Chihiro, or this pine room where they were staying, is actually in right now. And so Iori is sort of just like stuck up here on this way, as like this elevator with Chihiro and Hiruhiko is crashing down multiple of these floors. I really want to believe that they are up on like on the highest floors possible, like on like the 45th floor. Like, I actually don't know how high this hotel is. We probably can look if we go back a few chapters ago. Actually, yeah, let me Hey guys, post-production Glowplasma 221 here. I quickly want to say that I'm going to leave all of this inside of the video, but the next minute or so is me going to be trying to figure out how many floors are on the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel. But if we look back to chapter 66 of the series, which is like 2 chapters before this one, of course, being this is 68, we actually see that Masumi are on the roof of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel right now, or at least where the ongoing construction is going on. And it says that they are on the 35th floor of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel. So as far as we know, there are currently 35 floors of this hotel. So everything I'm about to be going and saying is just completely wrong. So disregard all of that. But I'm going to be leaving it anyway, because I think it's just a fun little discussion, all that. But yeah. Let me copy this, what's it called? The tab. And what was that? That was chapter 65 whenever the Bloodshed Hotel got introduced. Yes, it was actually. So yeah, so what we sort of see here is there's like the ground floor tier, and then out of all of the other tiers we see, there is a second, a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and it looks like the 10th is currently halfway in construction, along with all of the other various floors that, of course, we knew that they were currently building up. So yeah, I want to believe that they're like on one of the higher floors, like maybe on the I think like 9th floor would be cool, so like they're almost all the way at the top, and this elevator is just crashing all the way down to the ground floor. It's at least what I want to believe, because it's like, it would be as cool if they're just on the 2nd floor, so the elevator doesn't have as long to like travel as it's like going down. I mean, I think of my college dorm building, and I actually live on the 7th floor, which is pretty cool, being that my college campus, most of the dorm buildings only go up to like 6 floors or like 5 floors. I'm in one of the 2 that actually goes up, like there's one that goes up to 10th floor, and one of them, and the one that I live in actually goes up to the 8th floor. And it's pretty cool that I get to live on like the 7th floor, because I got one hell of a view out of my college town, and it just the beautiful scenery around it. I don't know if I'm giving off too much away about where I go to college or anything, but I don't know, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of beautiful colleges around here, right? But either way, what is going on here? I want to believe they're like crashing all the way down. Iori is stranded here on the, what I presume to be high up floor. We don't know what it is. And she's just like, hey, and she just thinks like, about all of Chira's words of like, hey, don't worry, I'll promise I'll get you back. And she's like, what? You're really leaving me here? And she also thinks to the message that Chira said earlier of they're all headed to this floor now. As we see all of the other elevators on this floor suddenly open at once as a bunch of sorcerers get ready to sort of walk out. It looks like we see at least 3 in all of these elevators, but like, just imagine that they're all like chocked full. As Iori's sort of like standing here and she's just like clicking the button for the other, one of the other working elevators. So it seems like how the setup is there are 6 elevators, 6 elevator ports, I should say, on each floor, of like 3 on one side and 3 on the other side. But Iori is like clicking the button like incredibly fast, like just thinking like, hey, if I click it faster, it'll get here, right? And she's just like mashing it back and forth. And she's like, hey, I thought you said like not to worry. As she just keeps pressing the button, and eventually there's a ding as the elevator door opens, and who would walk out? None other than Ro. As he's like, hey, yo, Iori, come on in. And she's like, okay. As she gets into the elevator, Ro follows her in, like, knocks out a bunch of these guys. I don't know if he kills them or knocks them out. We don't actually see what's presumed to be a lot of blood on the ground. We mainly just see, like, a bunch of bodies just laying there. So I presume that Ro just, like, knocked them out and did not murder all of them, right? As the elevator's, like, going up. As Ro's just like, all right, let's go in this moment. And Iori's like, hey, I thought Chihiro said that, like, you guys need 3 people on the roof to finish the seal. And Ro's like, oh, what are you talking about? I mean, we finished. You can go back to being a regular high school girl soon. And Iori's a little bit silent at this moment, as she's like, oh, really? I mean, I can go back? I mean, the seal, I don't really understand how it all works, but, like, those people who attacked know what school I go to. And, I mean, they saw my face, and like one teacher was even, I mean, as she just like remembers, of course, Kugiri like jumping up and murdering that teacher outside, and she's just like, hey, how can I go back to school like nothing's happened? I mean, and Ro's like, hey, the events of the past 2 days will be hazy, and no one will remember what happened, though we can't bring back the dead. And Iori's like, hey, but those bad guys came because I was trying to break the seal. It's like, it's my own fault, my teacher is. And Ro's like, no, it's absolutely not. The Hishaku are to blame for this. And if anyone slipped up, it was us, the Masumi. As of course, like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, hey, Iori had no reason to feel guilt for this. The Hishaku were the ones who came and murdered that teacher. And if anybody, Ro and the team of the Masumi were the people who did not do a good enough job on the ceiling to make it actually go and work. So I sort of really understand where Iori's coming from, like, hey, I can't believe all this has happened. But either way, Ro's like, hey, you don't need to worry yourself about it whatsoever, right? As Ro just continues, like, hey, we're ninja and we never learned about human emotions. When we created that seal 3 years ago, we didn't understand the parent-child bond. So our seal was insufficient. But after talking with you, we have a better sense now, and this time, the seal will reach the very root of your consciousness, right? There's no risk of it breaking again, and you can go right back to your regular school life. And Ro's like, hey, the only thing we still need for the seal is the key. And Iori's like, what is the key? As Ro pretty much explains, like, hey, as we all know so far, the hotel is enclosed in an enormous barrier, right? As we remember whenever Sengoku said, like, hey, the barrier this building is imbued with ensures complete privacy. I'm actually shocked I nailed that, Rook, because, like, whenever I first did that video of the Chapter 66 review, I did, like, 10 takes of that, because every time I kept, like, flubbing my words on the whole thing of, like, hey, the barrier the building is imbued with ensures complete privacy. Man, I'm doing really good right now. I'm, like, all the words are just, like, flowing out of the mouth. I don't know, maybe, like, the water I'm drinking a special day or something, wetting the whistle very good or something, I don't know. But, yeah, where was I? Ro pretty much just continues saying, like, hey, every barrier has a lantern that powers it, right? And this hotel, this lantern, is installed on the roof. And that's where we need the key. As Ro just says, like, hey, the seal we are applying to Iori is massive, and we arranged to borrow that power source to complete it. As we go get a look downstairs when apparently they were asking Sengoku about this, and Sengoku's like, given unique circumstances, only if it's momentarily, right? And Ro says, like, hey, he was supposed to have the key, and Chihiro headed downstairs, right? And Iori's like, I mean, well, you could say that, as we sort of cut down to the elevator that is currently going through all of these floors, as we just see, like, hey, we'll leave it to him then. As we cut into the elevator, we just hear a bunch of shing, shing, clash, shing, shing, as we see that Hiruhiko and Chihiro are just sort of like flying through the air in this elevator space, swinging their swords back and forth, cutting each other, just having one hell of a time going at it. I mean, we see that Hiruhiko is almost dual-wielding both a sheath and a katana, same with Chihiro holding the katana in his hand and his sword in his other hand. Of course, Chihiro's doing this because he needs to use the White Purity style or an EI style in general to sort of like build up the kata energy. As we see that they eventually get onto the first floor, as the elevator comes crashing down and like explodes the door around it, just like shattering everything in general, and Chihiro leaps out and jumps into the main lobby area as Hiruhiko is still in the elevator, right? And Chihiro's just like, okay, his technique is unorthodox, but each slash is loaded with powerful spirit energy, even though he seems to have very little experience with the sword, as all of a sudden, Chihiro hears some guy laying on the ground going like, hey, are you Masumi? And he's like, hey, this is from the general manager, for the lantern. And we see that this guy has a little bit of a key in his hand in this moment. And he just goes like, hey, that guy was clearly an amateur. As we get a little bit of a flashback to whenever Hiruhiko was fighting Sengoku, and this guy was sort of on-looking from the side, right? And as he just thinks like, hey, just swinging blindly and following no particular form, and yet his unskilled sword severed the general manager's arm. As you sort of see the aftermath of that happen, is like, hey, what just happened? Like, hey, it won't happen again. And that was the last words we saw of this battle last chapter. We get to get a little bit of narration like, hey, I thought it was pure chance. And he's like, yes, not again. A student of freedom, he's about to learn that swordplay is nothing to trifle with, right? And he's like, hey, I trained under Master Sengoku daily for 7 whole years. In all of that time, I never once scored a single point against him, right? As we see that this guy's just like, man, what sort of stance was that? As you pretty much like get a little bit of a flashback too of like Sengoku saying like, hey, nice try. Your footwork followed through is weak though, right? As we just see like he's training this guy and Sengoku says like, hey, there are no geniuses in this world. Remember that. And nothing surpasses diligent and consistent effort. Remember, never neglect that fact. As we see this guy's just like, yeah, yes, sir. As he just says like, no, what the hell? As we cut back into the present, as we see that Hiruhiko cut Sengoku's arm off, he cut his head off, and just like did all of this stuff, completely obliterating and murdering Sengoku, right? As this guy's just laying on the ground like, yeah, you damn liar, there are geniuses, right? As he's like, hey, he was unstoppable, and his sword was invisible. As Chihiro sort of hears this, as Hiruhiko walks out of the elevator shaft at this point, and the guy's like, oh, here he comes. As you just get a little bit of narration in this moment going, hey, invisible sword skills. Through the keen vision Chihiro honed over all of the deadly battles he's endured, he perceived the secret to Hiruhiko's technique. The ability to use both left and right hands, and both overhand and underhand holds, in freely in any combination, along with moving instantly through his opponent's blind spots. This causes the opponent to be completely lose sight of his blade. As we sort of see this movement, we get this really cool panel of like Hiruhiko running forward, and like his hands are almost like invisible where his sword would be being held because he's just like moving with them. We also see a image of like Hiruhiko like throwing his sword around behind his back, catching it in whatever way, and then using that to attack. 'Cause I mean, we've seen Hiruhiko use his sword in completely different ways this entire time. We've seen that whenever he's getting ready to strike, though, he's mostly just like held the sword behind him, sort of like parallel behind him in this like really unique way of like holding the blunt edge of the blade sort of towards his back, and then like facing the opposite direction is the other side. So he sort of like switches hands back there and like grabs it out however he wants to. I hope you know that as like going through it, I'm describing this, I'm holding both hands behind my back and like moving them back and forth to like emulate what Hiruhiko is pretty much doing, and like pull them out and like, oh man, the sword's in this position, or no, it's underhand in my left hand, right? Oh no, it's overhand in my right? I hope you know, I do that constantly when recording videos. I honestly think whenever I eventually get a good webcam and like am able to like show my face and do all of this, you guys are going to enjoy these videos a whole lot more because of the stupid like handholds I'm doing behind me. I don't know, but whatever. In this moment, we see the blade is coming towards Chihiro, and Chihiro barely dodges out the way. Hiruhiko's like, whoa, he was able to see that and dodge, as we see that Chihiro sort of gets his own blade sort of coming really close to Hiruhiko's face, as we get a kill sound effect in this moment, as we see that Chihiro's blade is right up against Hiruhiko's neck, and Hiruhiko's blade is up against Chihiro's neck. Oh, would you look at that, right? Both of them sort of like skid away from each other. Hiruhiko's blood running down his face, right? Chihiro's on the other side, right? As this sort of onlooker student of Sengoku's just like looking on and all like, oh my god, what's going on here, right? As Hiruhiko just thinks like, wow, he countered from that position and his blade was faster than mine, right? As he just says that loud like, oh wow, truly ferocious, Chihiro. I like it, right? And Chihiro just thinking to himself like, hey, why? He dodged my white purity style, like, I need to be faster. He's like, hey, I need to be faster. As Chihiro's like, hey, yeah, I mean, well, sure. As he sort of just remembers the whole idea of what was said earlier, like, hey, Sombra is currently in motion to kill the contracted sword bearers. And Chihiro's like, faster. I need to be faster. As Chihiro's like, hey, Hiruhiko, I will kill you and I will get to the roof. And he's like, hey, I need to take that key and give Iori her life back, right? As we look at the elevator where, of course, Ro and Iori are heading up the elevator to the roof of this building, as Ro's just like, hey, I mean, so you've made up your mind? You're going to return to school? And we just sort of get inside of Iori's conscious, as she's just like, wow. I mean, yeah, I'll go back to school and I'll no longer be Seiichi Samura's daughter. I mean, it's not that I want to reject that truth, and she just remembers all of this various stuff like, hey, he's forgotten you too. The Masumi were appointed to protect you if the need arose. Samura is currently in motion to control their contracted sword bearers. And she just thinks like, wow, it sounds like my dad's attention is elsewhere, so, I mean, I guess he's fine with forgetting me. As she's just really quiet and just thinking like, I guess I'm the only one who is struggling with a hole in my heart. As she just in a moment just says out loud, yes, to going back to school. And that's where we end off the chapter on this honestly really somber note of like, yeah, you can tell that Iori really wants to have some interaction with her father, to sort of understand what she's been missing her entire life by not having her father around you. Probably going to what Chihiro was saying last chapter of like, hey, my father was Kunishige Rokuhira and I would never give up the time that I spent with him. Or I don't know if he's directly said that out loud to Iori, but I know that we've definitely heard Chihiro say that, what was it, chapter 66 maybe again? I don't honestly remember. But yeah, Chihiro had that moment. Yeah, it was like, hey, after you got the chapter open, it's like, hey, what if I never lived with my dad? Maybe I kind of go to school. Maybe I wouldn't be putting my life online. Maybe I wouldn't be covered in wounds. But even so, I wouldn't trade that time for anything. Same sort of difference here. And we see that Iori's sort of struggling with this fact of like, damn, that really sucks. But yeah, that's where we end this chapter of Kagurabachi in chapter number 68, titled Metamorphosis. Now, I don't quite know where this title comes through. I don't know if it's sort of talking about like the metamorphosis of what character in respects. Of course, we see that Hiruhiko is growing into something different. We see that Chihiro is learning his sword skills better. But I honestly want to think it relates to Iori the most, who's sort of like coming to terms with this life. But honestly, I'm honestly struggling to figure out where this metamorphosis title really ties into what character is sort of metamorphosizing into something different. Like I said, I want to sort of believe it's Iori, but I don't really quite know. But really fun chapter. I did really like most parts of this. I sort of still have a few problems with Ro as a character, but I sort of feel like being that he is sort of the Masumi leader, he's the one who sort of has more to do with this than Moku and Sumi, as it definitely seems like Moku and Sumi have more skill and expertise in creating these mandalas and these seals, and Ro is sort of like the leader who knows how to do it all, but probably not all as perfectly as the other two do. But it also makes sense why he's the one sort of interacting with Iori, as he's definitely been built up as like, hey, this is the most important member of the Masumi right now. Their big thing is like this other new character of the student of Sengoku here. I sort of want to believe that he's going to become a bigger character later on, because it's like, hey, this guy is sort of like, hey, there's geniuses in this world, and he's crying over all of this stuff, seeing Hiruhiko being so strong. It'd be really cool if like he became part of like Chihiro's group, or like Kabunagi, or maybe he's even a Mossby member in the future. I don't know, that'd be cool, but like just taking and using this character and transforming them into something else that's really, really cool, being like, hey, this guy in his entirety is going to be somebody who can also start to rival and show that hard work and dedication is really the only right way to get these sword skills done, because we're also getting this dichotomy of like, okay, Hiruhiko is just like a natural born genius at this sword fighting almost, and Chihiro is too, and it's part due to his Rokihira eye, but he still has to train it like the White Purity style and all of these other things to sort of build up his general power to be able to rival the skills of a Hiruhiko, of a Yora, or any of the other sort of Hishaku antagonists. I guess really right now Chihiro's main antagonist is Hiruhiko, and then we sort of followed up with Kugiri and then Yura, I guess, if we were going to go to. I sort of wish I could still say that Sojo was a part of that, but no, Sojo is dead and exploded from all of the various Danseki from Shokoku, so yeah. I don't have anything else to say about this Kagurabachi chapter. I thought it was pretty fun. I thought it was pretty cool. I love Hiruhiko's character design, and every panel Hiruhiko's in, it's like, man, damn, I like how that looks. But yeah, with all of that being said, I really don't have too much else to say about any of this. Like I said, good chapter of Kagurabachi, just like really fun, fluid motion just going through. I love like the whole thing of like the two of them fighting in the elevator, just like pairing as this elevator is crashing down from a really high floor or something. But yeah, thank you guys so very much for watching this video on Kagurabachi chapter number 68, titled Metamorphosis. If you want to catch out some of my other Kagurabachi videos, I will have a playlist link down in the description box down below, and also a, what are those things called? Why can I not think? Oh, the end card on this video. And also just go to my YouTube channel. The playlist is all linked there. All of my other various videos are on there. I've done plenty of videos. Like I made like 25 Kagurabachi chapter reviews at this point. I don't know, because I've recorded like 3 here in the past 2 days since I've been a little bit behind. So I haven't even gotten those edited yet. So it sort of is what it is there. But hey, I'm recording this video like, what is it right now? It's 12:41 at the current second of recording this. So it's like almost 3 hours after this chapter came out. So that's not bad whatsoever. But yeah, Kagurabachi, pretty dope, good chapter of it, and I'll be excited to see what happens next time in chapter number 69. Haha, nice, cool chapter of Kagurabachi, that's what I'm saying. Here's the problem, I am a college-age student, I still barely understand what's funny about that joke. Like, I don't know why that number's so like, oh man, that's great, that's funny. I just know that people say it is, so who knows? Maybe next Kagurabachi chapter will be generational, and everybody will be like, Kagurabachi chapter number 69 is the best chapter, and that's not a joke, who knows, but I'll catch you guys next time for that chapter. Again, this was chapter number 68, titled Metamorphosis. And yeah, I'll catch you guys then. This will be Glowplasma 231 signing out. And again, watch bros, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.